When we are busy, we sometimes forget that photography, after all, is all about light and decisions we make in relation to light.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Photography Radio. My name is Tomasz, and today you are listening to Beyond the Frame with Olaf Sztaba, where he challenges you to take visual risks and think differently about your photography. Honest, bold, and unapologetic. Typical Olaf. Enjoy.
Can you imagine your life without photography? No? Then you will love this show. And it doesn't matter if you're a DSLR, a mirrorless, or a mobile phone shooter. We're here to help your photography grow. This is Photography Radio.
So Happy New Year! Today I would like to talk about creating magic in photography. Almost every day we are bombarded with so many appealing and different things about photography, courses, presets, gear tests, ideas, and this is a good thing. When we are busy, we sometimes forget that photography, after all, is all about light and decisions we make in relation to light. I have talked about this many times before. Sometimes we don't have enough light, so we use strobes, flashes, and so many different tools to help us. Other times we actually may have too much of it. And the key is that without light, there is no photography. It's so easy to forget this. When I teach the Visual Poet Experience workshops, one of the sort of biggest surprises for me is that so many students don't pay enough attention to light. Why? To be honest with you, I don't know. Maybe because it is so obvious, almost like a cliché. It's not that they are not aware of it, but somehow in this excitement of crafting a new image, we don't realize that there is so much magic at our disposal. With our unlimited imagination and those amazing cameras that we have nowadays, we are able to craft and present a much different world of visuals. And here's interesting part. Something we cannot do with our own eyes. You may say, what are you talking about, Olaf? Okay, so as you listen to this podcast, and I hope you are not driving, but even if you are driving, look around. What do you see? And right now, try to send a signal from your brain to your eyes to make everything you see around you darker. In photographic terms, try to underexpose. Can you do it? No, of course you can't. I cannot. You just can imagine what it would look like, but you cannot do it. And this is such a fascinating part which we don't often talk about. Actually, with our cameras, especially if you have electronic viewfinder, you can use something known as an exposure compensation. So we have this magical knob or a button, depends on the camera, which allow us to control light. And this is one of the most important and most useful tools we have at our disposal. I have to admit that I will not take even one photo before playing with this knob, left or right, plus or minus. In other words, overexposing or underexposing my image, making it darker or making it brighter. So why is it so important that I'm talking about this? Well, think about it. You have an ability to control light at the level you cannot do with your own eyes. No, we cannot do it. You cannot say to your eyes, okay, why don't you just underexpose everything in front of me by 2 stops? It is just beyond my understanding why so many people ignore or do not use this magical tool in photography. When you underexpose the image, especially in strong contrasty light, you almost create a brand new visual world, which most people would never see. Keep in mind, you cannot underexpose with your eyes or overexpose. But once you do this, this brand new world will appear in front of you, almost like magic. Some areas of the image will become darker or even disappear into a total blackness, creating a beautiful negative space and leaving only what we want in plain sight. And I have to admit, think about it, this totally changes the dynamic of the image. Even composition and the power of the image is being changed. How cool is that? But that brings me to another point. With light as a centerpiece of photography, there is another side of the story, and that is darkness. Jonas Rask, my good friend and a brilliant photographer, wrote about this in one of his articles titled "When Darkness Becomes the Content." Let me quote him. He writes, "What happens when we stop chasing light and start chasing its absence? We need to look at darkness as an absence of light instead of thinking of darkness as being present in its own right. We need to think of darkness as something closely related to a feeling of something missing." I love that. In other words, once we notice and embrace light, next we should think about is when and where within the frame we don't want light. So let me repeat this. Of course, we focus and think about light first, but our next step should be to think when and where within the frame we don't want light. The exposure compensation tool is exactly what helps us with achieving this. I read this great line, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the author, but somebody says, "Light is easy to love. Show me your darkness." It's probably not a photography quote, but I love it. Again, we are going back to the problem of not being able to see how the scene we have in front of us would look like if we underexpose it. And that brings me to another important point connected with this subject. That is our imagination. I'm not talking imagination in the context of photoshopping or creating some graphical designs, which I don't think this is photography. I'm talking about crafting real photographs by controlling light. And this world of our imagination is really, really worth exploring. So next time, my photographic friend, when you go out photographing during a beautiful sunny day, look around and imagine what would the scene in front of you look like if you underexpose. Just close your eyes and imagine. Just imagine. You will discover a brand new visual world out there. It will take your photography to absolutely magical place. I know I sound excited about this, but I absolutely love it. As always, let me leave you with one quote by Gregory Maguire. The eye is always caught by light, but shadows have more to say. Thank you so much for listening. As always, please head to photographyradio.com, leave us a note, suggestion, idea, and I guess until next time.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Hit subscribe on your podcast app. It would mean a lot for us to have you as our regular listener. Head over to photographyradio.com to drop your suggestion for future editions of Photography Radio or simply to say hello. We would absolutely love to hear from you. In the meantime, have a wonderful night and we will be back with more photography in your ears very soon.